Good evening. Valentine's Day didn't occur on a Thursday this year, but love is still in the air. Welcome to tonight's Alpha Phi Alpha Surgeon General Initiative webinar on love, relationships, and mental health. On behalf of Alpha Phi Alpha's General President, Brother Dr. Willis Lanza III, I am Dr. Jeffrey Sterling, Surgeon General for Alpha Phi Alpha. Allow me to introduce tonight's moderator, Alpha's Deputy Surgeon General for Mental Health, Brother Dr. Ron Kennedy Bailey. Brother Dr. Bailey is the Kathleen and John Bricker Chair, Professor, and Head of the Department of Psychiatry at LSU Health Sciences Center. He is also the Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Cobb Research Institute and famously the past President of the National Medical Association. We are proud to have him as Alpha Phi Alpha's Deputy Surgeon General for Mental Health. Dr. Bailey, welcome and have a great show, and I'll see you on the back end. Leave me some time after this conversation.
Absolutely. We look forward to a great conversation today. I'm very thankful, as you point out, Jeff, to our outstanding General President, Brother General President Lanza, for conceptualizing this idea of having a Surgeon General's initiative. I mention each month when I get my opportunity to share these comments how forward-thinking and progressive I think that is in any era, but especially in the era of time when many persons, especially African-American men, are challenged with issues regarding health and health concerns. From our past long-term chronic illnesses of hypertension and diabetes challenges to more recent issues regarding, infections with COVID-19 and whatever the future holds. The reality is health issues are of monumental importance to all of us, and within our fraternity and think internally of great importance to us because we, as health professionals, want all of the brothers in Alpha Phi Alpha nationally and internationally to do well and to be healthy and strong, vibrant, and able to optimize, I think, many of the values they actually bring to the organization, to our society. I would also share, I think that Brother Jeff Sterling brings a unique value to this role. I've known Jeff Sterling for 30 years since we both finished med school. I think you at University of Illinois at Chicago, and University of Texas in Galveston, and from over the course of those 3 decades, have really watched the career really grow, I think, and expand, and really touch so many of the key metrics I think that are relevant in our society. Issues regarding addressing healthcare disparities in communities that have been traditionally disenfranchised and marginalized. Issues regarding, I think, being a leader, a doctor among doctors, and ensuring that we put health, our own health, first and foremost, within the brotherhood. And also, I think the construct of trying to find new creative ways, I think, to use technology, which I think has really been one of your strengths, to optimize our overall work product. So thank you very much, I think, for the opportunity to be the lead for the mental health task force of the Surgeon General's Initiative. I think it has a remarkable timeliness and value. I thank all of the members, I think, of our group. We have about 11 or 12 persons across the country who touch this issue, and I think bring great value based on their collective and respective expertise kind of going forward. That being said, I think tonight we are all excited about, I think, a very timely, appropriate, and effective topic this year regarding relationships. We're calling it love, relationships, and mental health. The reality is these are huge issues, I think, in every community, but they're big issues in our community. Many men within our fraternity and within our community of African men nationally have challenges in these regards. It may start off fun and fun-loving and productive, but at times it can be problematic or complicated. Relationships don't go well, or when they are not optimized, and they lead to, I think, a less than progressive approach that may actually limit one's functionality in other areas of life, and our work and our vocation and our finances and our health and otherwise. Clearly, I think thoughts and a discussion along this line are timely. We actually hope to have a back and forth today with a question and answer, because there's certainly some topics that I think have a great utility of value. And I think we have the optimized individual, one of the best I think that I know to address it, a certified marriage counselor, good brother Richard Doss. Brother Doss specializes in this area, works out of Chicago. I see his picture there. Welcome now. And I thank you for your expertise in so many other areas. But I think tonight we've hit the home run by making you our singular panelist on the issue of love, relationships, and mental health. Brother Richard Doss.
And it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Obviously, I'm not coming as the person who has all the answers. But I tell you what I do have. I have a lot of questions. And And over the course of my 30 years in practice, I've seen a lot. So, licensed clinical psychologist, I am a marriage and family counselor for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, one of the myths about mental health counseling and therapy is that Black folks don't come to therapy. That's not true. That's not true. So, I see about 100 men a week, individual, group, anger management, PTSD groups, and I probably see about ten women a week. But one of the things that has risen to the surface is that people have problems in their marriages. People have problems in their marriages. And now, one of the difficult things about it is that, many of us were taught, what happens in the house stays in the house. So if I have challenges, then the question becomes, who do I turn to? Who can I talk to? So tonight, I want to begin a conversation. I think Dr. Sterling has already said we'll call this part one of a conversation. Um, I want to begin a conversation about some topics that we don't frequently talk about. If I'm having difficulties in my marriage, do I go to Thanksgiving dinner and tell everybody? Mm-mm. I have to be very careful even telling my own friends about my challenges because they might hold it against my wife. And if my wife tells what I'm doing, they might hold it against me. And as we move on and try to, continue and grow our marriage, we got people outside of the marriage, holding grudges and resentments. So tonight, like I say, there are a number of topics and a number of questions that have come in already from some people who were aware that this topic was coming. Uh, it's a heated topic, and the truth is that COVID, for many couples, COVID has not helped. So I work with a number of couples who are stuck in the house with each other all day, every day. In particular, because I work with a number of retired veterans. Um, and to put it the proverbial way, uh, all HE double hockey sticks has broken loose. And so I've seen a little bit of everything. And so, like I say, just tonight, we'll have a conversation, and
Absolutely.
and you jump in. Uh,
Well,
and
I'm
you have
gonna jump in first because I think that you've already hit more than a few hot button topics, and I'm gonna start off by asking you, Brother Doss, how do you advise brothers when they are trying to find ways to use your terms, grow the relationship? And I say that in the context that Alpha Alpha has brothers of all ages, probably from 20 to 100. And part of what we discussed tonight will be with a lot of younger brothers starting relationships. That for those first 7 years are very often what many call, the pre-divorce years. I think 5 to 7 are the high breakup or divorce type years. But very often, one reason people break up or divorce or have conflict or begin to have marginalized relationships is the inability to grow, and to grow, I think, in synergy and develop, many would argue, truths that really work well for each. What most people, lay people, will say that people will grow apart, and I think part of the discussion tonight is how might persons think about growing together. I'd be interested in your thoughts.
all right. So the first thing I'll start off with, and I often ask this question of couples that are having challenges. If I come from a dysfunctional family and my wife comes from a dysfunctional family, what kind of family are we about to create? Okay, so that's the first question. You know, so what resources am I going to pull from to determine what healthy even looks like? So, uh, for a lot of couples, they'll say, well, we've been doing it this way for so long. This is the way my mama did it, and this is the way my daddy did it. Or my mama, was by herself. and I'm just trying to do it the way she was doing it, and it's not working too good. And my husband's parents were divorced too, so we just trying to figure it out. So, Doc, you asked the question, uh, how can we make this relationship healthy? So watch this. I have a lot of couples who say, you're talking about something that we're not familiar with. We actually have never been in a healthy relationship. We actually don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So we're shooting for a goal that we can't identify. Uh, so is it that I'm trying to make Dr. Sterling's family look like Dr. Bailey's family, or Dr. Bailey's family look like Dr. Dawson's family? That's not how that works. So everybody has to find that solution that makes sense for them. Um, and one of the hard things, as we talk about having a healthy relationship, is that a lot of the problems that we have in our relationships were present early on. And so one of the questions that I saw on the list for discussion tonight was, why isn't it that men and women don't talk about things that concern them before they get married? Why don't they talk about those big issues, the thing that they don't like that their partner is doing or saying, or the way that they're behaving? Um, and the answer, man, I wish people, would start chiming in if they can. And the truth is, people don't talk about difficult topics before marriage because it threatens the wedding day, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, talking about healthy, the wedding day for many couples is more important than the conversation about what is this going to look like day to day after we get married. So in talking about what's healthy, man, you really have to rewind the tape and have conversations about, what do I think a husband's role is, what do I think a wife's role is, and then to ask my wife as well, um, baby, what do you think I'm supposed to do as your husband, and what do you think you're supposed to do as my wife? um, One of the things that I teach people is, I am very wary about the idea that we all got common sense. Well, we don't all have the same common sense, because what my mother did in my house may be very different from what your mother did in your house, or what your father did in your house versus what my father did in my house. Um, so it gets real tricky when we start trying to define what healthy even looks like. Uh,
I'll just jump in. I think that's a tremendous point. I clearly think that this issue about people, planning for a wedding and not planning for a marriage or a relationship is well said. And I think that in many settings, I think that's a huge issue for us to discuss with people young and middle aged and old, because it probably is a setup for disaster. Many would argue good communication is key, and it has to be proactive conversation and communication. I love your point, Dr. Doss. I think the reality is also communication is a bit stoic, as we try not to step on anybody's toes or anybody's feelings.
right.
That being said, I got some good questions here. We're going to kind of jump right into them. One that I'm going to start off with is, should I speak up or just be quiet when I'm upset? And I think I'll lay a little groundwork arguing that we all get upset. It's the nature of being human. Relationships, I think, are even more challenging than other settings. Intimate relationships are even more challenging than other settings. We're more likely to get upset even by things that might not make us upset with somebody else. Before you answer, I'll just refer to a point you made earlier in regard to how tough 2020, 2021 were. I've done a lot of work on domestic violence in my career. I wrote a book about it. And even I've been surprised to find out that these last 2 years, 2021, we had the highest rates ever recorded of domestic violence in our community.
Wow.
More violence, more progressive violence, more intimate partner violence toward those people who we claim to love and respect and take care of. Huge issues. And one may start off with, how should I respond and how should I act when I'm upset with an intimate partner? Your thoughts?
Well, the way that I get the question oftentimes is, should I go off, uh, or should I be quiet and just kind of keep the peace? And so and I ask, which one is better? Is it better for you to just go off, or is it better for you to just be quiet, take it, and try to keep the peace so that you don't have a fight? And I would say that both of those are unhealthy, right? So if I'm going off, this there's an extreme, that we go from being passive, where we didn't say anything, to being aggressive, where we were ramming our thoughts down somebody's throat. Right. So is it okay for me to go off on somebody? That's not cool. That's not cool. Now, the way that I hear some people talk about it is, you know, better out than in. I'm gonna say what I feel. I'm gonna say what I'm thinking, so that I don't carry that stuff around. And so they feel liberated to lose it, to make their point. All right. So the flip side of that is, yeah, I used to be angry and mean and violent, but Doc, I'm a lot better now. So when I'm mad now, I just don't say anything. And I allow, just my resentment just to build up, but that's better than going off. So do I have to be aggressive, or do I have to be passive for me to be in a healthy relationship? There's a middle ground. And the middle ground actually, when I say it, it might sound easy, but the middle ground is very, very hard to do. And the middle ground is where we are assertive. The idea being that something bothered me, and instead of me just taking it and keeping it to myself, or instead of me going off on you, I just verbalized that what you said or did was inappropriate, unacceptable, uncool, and I'd say, hey, you know what you just said to me, I thought that was disrespectful.
That actually speaks, I think, very, very well to this issue, I think, of how we view one another and how we accept one another's feelings. One of the questions I think in the chat is this issue of, what's more important, what she said or what she meant. And in my career, all too often, I'm a forensic doctor by training. All too often, I kind of back into clinical medicine because I've had a forensic case or a legal case, and I can say bright as like today, cases I've had in the past where there was a conflict and a violent ending, and I'm doing an evaluation on somebody. But when they tell me their story, the story very often was relationship focused. It had an intimate nature to it. People really, I think, bring remarkable, extreme views and emotions to the equation when there's some intimacy, or one way or the other. And then somebody said something, and before you know it, the police are called. Now, very often, by the time the police are called, there's been a buildup. It doesn't happen very often with just one exchange, but there probably is some value in the brotherhood of us sharing, brothers, men and women, I think, on the call tonight, ways to meander and decrease and modify is what I'm looking for, that emotional buildup that gets you to the point where something sets you off, and then there's a conflict or there's a fight that leads to domestic violence, leads to everything from the police being called to all kinds of conflicts. And we're gonna keep it real tonight. All too often adversely impact African American men in our society. Now, do I believe that we as Black men have more risk inherently? No, I don't. But I do think that the unfortunate combination, the secret sauce, men would argue, of in many settings a hyper vigilant police force. Also, the issue regarding the lack of, I think, another area of my life, about optimized training of law enforcement so that they're hearing your message. If there's a phone call or police come, very often they're responding to items that may not have been said, or maybe over responding. And then the third issue, of course, is the issue regarding whether persons are actually sharing all of the details of facts. And there are rules and laws now that say that police come to your house, that somebody has to go. So the domestic violence issue is key. And I think these are issues that are very important if you begin to consider how we engage with one another in this setting. What are your thoughts about how do I respond to what he or she says? In this case, men, if they're responding to what she said versus what she meant.
So I guess the first piece that comes to mind, in asking the question, which is more important, what she meant and what she said, or how I took it. At the end of the day, it's how I took it, because that's my reality. That's my reality. I really don't care what she meant. You know, I know what I heard, and you know that has to come through my personal filter. And for a lot of people, a lot of men in particular, the response is, I have to show somebody, um, my partner, my wife, my girlfriend. I have to show her that I ain't no punk. I don't know what she was thinking when she said that to me, or I don't know what she was thinking when she did that. Um, and so there are a lot of people in jail right now because they ain't no punk. Right. So when you start thinking about what are my options when it comes to expressing my anger, and you started off by saying that anger is a very natural emotional response. Um, but if I saw daddy beating mama because mama was getting out of line, and daddy used to beat me when I got out of line, and I view that as normal, then what am I supposed to do when my woman gets out of line? Right? And then you have females, on the flip side, who saw daddy beating mama, and that got, normalized as well. Uh, and, I've had, so I did some work in domestic violence for the city of Chicago. And I had a woman say to me once, and she was a survivor, a victim of domestic violence. She said, Doc, all men beat women. And I said, what do you mean all men beat? No, every man I never dated beat me. And so, a variant of the question for me becomes, is your normal healthy? So just because it's what you know, it's what you've always done, it's what you've always experienced, uh, is it normal? And I've had some women approach men, saying, "Hey, from time to time you're gonna have to hit me, show me that you ain't no punk." Right? And so now the challenge becomes, man, what is it that I was taught? What is it that I believe? What is it that's right? What is it that I need to do or say or show to let somebody know that I'm strong? What do I need to do to let somebody know that I'm not weak? Um, so we talk about corporal punishment and spanking kids. Yeah, I'm gonna spank them so that they know not to do that next time.
Right.
So does that extrapolate in adulthood to, I'm gonna hit her in the eye from time to time, and then watch this. I'm gonna give her some flowers, and then I'm gonna say to her, now look what you made me do.
And that's a tremendous segue into a key point that I want to ask you about. I was sharing with some of my coworkers, we were doing this show tonight, and one woman said, "Well, make sure you guys get into sex very, very early. You can't, beat around the bush and talk about sex late in the game." So we're 20 minutes in, and
Okay.
we got 40 minutes to go, but we go there. And I actually have three questions that I'm going to merge
All right.
to talk about. But you really draw my attention when you made that last comment about fighting and then flowers, and I'm thinking about the movie with Tina Turner and Ike Turner, and there's a scene where he has this violent response to her, talking about what did she say, what did she mean, and then they have this sexual encounter that some would call sexual assault on his part, based on the way it was depicted in the movie. And then I'm sure there's crying and upsetness. And then later he brings the flowers. And we got three questions that actually address it. So we're going to combine them. One is it my wife's job to give me sex, Dr. Doss? And another one is how much sex is too little and how much sex is too much. And I think that we got brothers on this gig tonight. You know, they are wondering, in relationships, some folks had a bad Valentine's Day, and it may have been about the issues of sex or lack thereof. Other folks may have had a good Valentine's Day if things actually worked right for them. Let's talk a little bit about the entire issue regarding sex and its mediation in this regard that can lead to conflict in relationship.
So let me start with the question: is if I have a relationship that's based on sex, uh, is that a good relationship? Is that a good relationship? Um, at 20, at 20, um, a lot of times the conversation isn't about, one day we might get married and have children and combine our income so that we can live a certain lifestyle in a certain neighborhood, driving certain cars. Uh, the 20-year-old conversation is what you're doing after the party. Um, let's be intimate. Um, so the question, is it my wife's job to give me sex? Now again, it seems like this would be a conversation that we would have before we got married, because I'm about to set somebody up, right? So I've worked with clients who were Catholic, who females who viewed sex as ugly and nasty and wrong. And so even once she got married, she didn't want to have sex. Uh, I can think of one client who, her husband said that she had told him that we're gonna hold off from having sex, but then after we get married, I tell you what, we're gonna do it all the time, boy. There's more than we can just handle. And then his response to me was the only time that she actually wanted to have sex was during procreation, to have children, right? So how much is enough? How much is too much? Do we have it at all? If I'm a married man and I'm not getting sex from my wife, where am I supposed to get it from? These are actual conversations that I have on a regular basis. And I never take sides. I never take sides. But you can guess this conversation gets very, very complicated. Is it my wife's job to give me sex? Or let me flip that. Is it her husband's job to always have a hard penis? There are caveats in both situations. If you built your relationship around good sex, what happens as the man, developmentally speaking, as the man gets older and he starts having, erectile dysfunction problems, or he has prostate problems, or he's diabetic, or he has high blood pressure and his medication is affecting his ability, or he never exercises and his ability to be erect isn't the same. Now, the flip side of that statement is it the husband's job to give his wife sex? So it's a two-way street. And the way I like to think about it is you can't have it both ways. And then ultimately, when sex diminishes in some relationships or with age, do you still have a relationship? and what does that relationship look like?
It's a tremendous point. I'll jump in by saying I often like to say that we have all these specialties in psychiatry: child
Okay.
psychiatry and addiction psychiatry, and forensic psychiatry and geriatrics. I think I've specialized in black male psychiatry. Almost
Okay.
every place I've been in my career, I was very often the only black male doctor there. With the residency, it was 14 people a year, 56 people in my residency. I think either the whole time, or maybe just 1 year, there's another black male. So almost de facto, I kept getting referred all of the black male patients. When I was in fellowship, and I went to Meharry, I was chairman of psychiatry at Meharry, and before Bill Ritchie got there and Steve Bryan was a brother got there, I think the first 4 years I was the only black male board certified psychiatrist on Meharry's faculty, and Meharry's an HBCU. But one thing I like to often say is I have a hard time remembering, Dr. Doss, when I've had a session with a black male and we did not talk about sex. I'm gonna repeat that. I have a hard time remembering in a 30-year career with all of the black males that I've seen for all kind of various sessions or functions. And I don't mean a 2 minute in the emergency room or real quick, Luis. I mean, when you get a good 30, a 45 minute, 50 minutes, a real session, sex is a huge issue. I love your point about good sex. That was actually the fourth question I was actually. It says here, is your marriage good if you're not having good sex? And I think you also had another huge point. Some people's sex start off good and then turns to where it's not so good. And is that grounds to leave somebody or to change your relationship with them in any form or fashion? I would argue that what men say to me, they speak with their feet, and they do value sex in such a fashion that if the sex is not present in the quantity and the quality that they like, then I won't say all men, but many men, that's a deal breaker. And that's going to be an issue. We're going to see questions in the chat. I've made my point, I think, very clear what I think is important to black men, what I think is important to brothers and Alpha Fraternity. And I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about it. And how have you counseled men in the past when they've tried to decide, okay, I'm going to end this relationship, and sex is a huge aspect or component of that, but they want to be counseled through going through the process? Or do you say, no, don't end your relationship? Sex is not that important, based on your professional experience. I'm interested in your thoughts.
I'd be naive to say that sex is not important. Uh, is sex the most important thing? I probably wouldn't go that far, but I would say that it is important. Uh, and I want to take it a step further. So, is it that, all women want the sex that you talking about? So, watch this. Uh, I got a group of, it's 30 men in a room, and a brother wants to talk about how he stood up in it. And I'm trying to, as I think about intimacy, what does standing up in it mean and look like? And then the question, if the clitoris is, a woman's, most sensitive, part of her genitalia, does standing up in it help her, or would she like some intimacy? Is sex important? Sex is important. Sex is important. Here's the conversation that I would have. If you are, a lot of people come and they say, well, doc, we're here because we're not communicating. And what I often say is, very rarely is it that somebody's in my office because they're not communicating. Watch this. They're communicating something. They're communicating something, right? And if your partner, your wife, your girlfriend doesn't want to have sex with you, then the question becomes, why not? What's going on? And so you may ask the question, have I done something? Are you mad at me? Or, speaking of domestic violence, I think about one woman that I counseled who was dating a man, and they were about to be intimate, and he kissed her on the back of her neck. and she had a panic attack and started screaming and shouting and hitting him. Well, come to find out, her grandfather had molested her for years as a child, and his breathing on the back of her neck was something that was a trigger for her PTSD.
It's a good point. I had a case like that once as well, where it was a young woman who lotion was her trigger, and it was because she had been sexually abused as well. I think you make a very important point about sexual abuse. I definitely think that all too often in relationships, people don't appreciate until it's too late that a history of sexual abuse does make a person, very often a woman, it can happen in both men and women, but most commonly this happens in women, very often young women, can make them much more vulnerable to a lot of the emotional challenges of relationship. It can be a trigger. In my case, it was lotion, if you will, being rubbed on the back or what have you. Your case, it was somebody kisses them on the back of the neck. I think that brothers should think about that and be mindful. Loved your point earlier. There could be a lot of reasons why a woman may not want to be intimate. It may not be what happened that day, or that recent argument with you, in the vernacular here today in this acute time period. It may be something that happened a long time ago in a distant past, and that person may not want to talk about it. They may have had a hard time. Maybe they didn't go to therapy, and they didn't have a venue, an avenue to talk about these issues to kind of get them out. I think a key issue for African American men, for all of us to think about and be mindful of, and to show some patience with, and try to help get somebody to a point where they're receiving better engagement. In fact, I wanted to ask the question, another one we have here, this
Hold
issue of
on, before you go to
what is
the
most important. Go ahead.
before you go to the next question, I would be negligent as a clinical psychologist for the Department of Veterans Affairs if I didn't say that men get raped too, boys get molested too, right?
Yeah,
And so,
good point.
we could have a conversation about what does that look like in men, um, and how does that present. Um, and if I, most of the men that I work with who've been victims of military sexual trauma, were in the Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard. In a macho culture, if you're raped or molested, who do you tell that to?
Right.
Right. So just the whole conversation about molestation and rape is a difficult conversation. And like I said, I think we'd be negligent if we didn't at least acknowledge that stuff happens to boys too, and stuff happens to men. And the thing that I say, in this regard is it's going to be hard for you to heal from something that you can't even talk about.
That's a good point. I think that our title today is Love, Relationships, and Mental Health. And we've hit some key mental health topics. We talked about domestic violence. I think we've talked about what happens when persons may be bringing some long-term emotional baggage into a relationship. That may be PTSD or long-term anxiety concerns. But I want to talk about love now. And I guess the ethereal question is, what does love look like for a Black man? And I say that because although you and I are on StreamYard, we thank StreamYard, and we got an audience today. There's some folks who are on television and on the media all the time. I call it, the Sally Jesse Raphael or Oprah Winfrey or whatever case. You got these talk shows, and all too often is relationships and is what is love, and all too often there are people on there trying to say, well, can I get love, and where can I find love, and why can't I keep a relationship or keep love or whatever. I think it's a reasonable parenthetical question for us to ask and to discuss with our audience today. What does love look like? And of course, we talk about Black men. Is it the same or is it different? Are there some different cues that guys send out that women should be looking for or thoughtful about? I'm always struggling with the fact that people will ask me questions that I may not be able to answer because they're trying to figure out their boyfriend or their relationship, how to get that person to the altar for a wedding. You mentioned weddings earlier, or how to kind of keep a relationship when to end one, when to grow one. But this issue of love, as broad and nebulous and vague as it may be, is huge in the lives of our brotherhood. And I'm interested in your thoughts and comments about love by, for, and about Black men.
Well, so first thing I'll say, we could talk about the 5 different love languages. Love is different for everybody, you know. So when let's say my vision of love is to have a woman who gives me uh, physical love, okay. Whereas somebody else's vision of love might be dependability. So as we talk about relationships developing and growing, does love mean that we're going to get married? Or is love even important in getting married? So watch this. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. People might say, yeah, man, love is the most important thing. But as you see older couples get married, and I work with men who have been married 3, 4 times. The thing that people are looking for oftentimes is different. Do I love you so much that I want to get married, or is it that I actually want to have kids? And so I'm gonna go ahead and get married. Um, do I love you? Do I marry you because I love you, or do I marry you because for the neighborhood that I want to live in, it takes two incomes, and so we'd be a great partnership. Um, do I marry you because I'm sick and I need somebody to take care of me? Do I marry you because uh, I have children that I have custody of, and my children need a mother? Um, so love is different for everybody, and people get married for different reasons. Um, if you want to be romantic, we'd like to believe that everybody gets married because they love each other. Um, a bigger question that I often ask is, do you respect each other? How about this one? Do you even like each other? And then as people come to me for, so some people come to me for divorce, marriage counseling, and then some people come to me for divorce counseling. And so one of the questions I asked early on is, have you already made up your mind? Or are you actually gone? Um, and so
Well,
one of the things, go ahead.
I'll just jump in. That's another good segue to the whole issue, I think, of cheating and infidelity and conflicts that very often revolve around that. That may be a major issue, a reason for loss of relationship or divorce. All too often in my practice, I see people actually come in to talk about it. It makes me wonder if they really are, to your last point, looking for a bridge to kind of stay together and try to find a way to kind of work through those concerns. I love your earlier comments today that a lot of what we think about relationship is what we saw. And more lessons that many would argue are caught than taught. So it's what we saw in our parents or siblings or relatives or neighbors or friends kind of it creates a driving force in people on how to move forward in your current present day relationship. And I think oftentimes that can be at conflict or very different than what you're hearing on. I mentioned the talk shows that are saying do X, Y, Z. I'm always thoughtful about Hillary Clinton and how she had a husband that there was a public issue regarding infidelity. She stayed with her husband, but many other people, particularly many women, criticized her vociferously. Didn't want to vote for her at the time, saying that she should have left her husband. So for some people, it is more of a global response, and not just that's a private matter between those two people. But I'm interested in your marital therapy cases. How do you handle this issue? Are you seeing it a lot? Like I think I do in my practice. I see it a lot, not just with clinical patients, but just as a guy that went to Morehouse College. I've been out 30 years. I tell people I'm not sure I'm a psychiatrist because people want to talk to me. Or folks want to talk to me because I'm a psychiatrist because my phone rings all the time, brother, with guys who are not going to see a psychiatrist in a professional way, but they'll call and talk to me or if they're in town, want to meet at a Starbucks and talk, and this is the issue that they want to talk about that they actually need some help with. So I wonder what kind of advice or pearls we could share with the audience today, based on your clinical practice and your experience, on how to manage these issues when a relationship is challenged because people have infidelity.
All right. So this is a tricky one because historically, a lot of men feel like and believe that if they cheat, the woman is supposed to forgive him and move on. That's old news, right? Um, and a lot of women have seen, their mothers get cheated on. They saw their grandmother get cheated on. They saw all their aunts and cousins and sisters get cheated on, and they stayed. So there is a culture that teaches women that men will be men. Boys will be boys. That's just kind of who he is, and that's how he can't help it. He just a man. Now watch this. But in our culture, uh, we have a prominent double standard. So when our women cheat on us, man, most of the brothers that I've met are intolerant and unforgiving. Um, I remember I had a case a few years ago with a veteran, 72 years old, and when he came back from Vietnam, he was self-medicating and he had become addicted to alcohol. And he was addicted to alcohol, and he was verbally, mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive to his wife. So this was 72, 73 that he was back abusive. Uh, Hell on wheels, really. Okay. And so she took years and years of abuse. Around 76 or 77, she cheated on him, looking for love, affection, somebody who was going to be gentle, tender, kind, and loving with her. His perspective was that she, was the scum of the earth, uh, the lowest thing that ever walked. Doesn't know why he, even stayed with her. Sitting in my office, and I'm sitting in my office now. They were on the couch, and he was about to tell me a story, and he starts the story off with, now remember, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, sexually abusive. He turns to her and he says, "Now let me tell you what this whore did." And I'm like, "I know you did." She's sitting right there. I know you didn't just say that. And he said, "Well, she a whore. Ain't she? You a whore, right?" And he based that on the fact that she cheated back in 1977. And so, in my mind, the question was, brother, if that's where you at on it, why didn't you just leave? Oh, that's a good thing. She cook good and, take care of the kids. Uh, but he couldn't see his fault. He couldn't see his wrongs. And the conversation that he had about her was insane. I feel like she was being abused in my office. Um, and so yeah, so we have a double standard. Um, and this is what I surmise from the relationship is he said I forgave her, but then he spent 40 years punishing her. Now the question, for most men, if you cheated and then you said you were sorry, and your wife says she forgave you, but then every week She brought up, you cheat. I remember you cheat. I don't trust you. What's on your phone? Let me see your text. Who calling you? Where you going? How long do you think the average man would stay married?
That's a long time, no doubt about it. That actually brings me to another piece. I have a question that I want to ask. I think parenthetically, the issues are men and women equal? And I guess you and I should try to be address it in the eyes of black men and
Okay.
alpha men. Do we think that our women are equal with us? You already laid the groundwork, with one cheat and with the other one cheat, if you will. There's also the issue, I think, of fiscal matters or financial matters. There's also issues, I think, in regards to, when somebody's value changes. I loved your earlier point that, at a certain point, a man may have erectile dysfunction or have a physical lack of capabilities. At some point, a person may not earn the same kind of income. But of course, women as well, they change in some of the representative value that certain men look for earlier in their relationships. So there's issues about value, I think, is important. And the huge concern, or the question number 11 is, are you and your woman, whether it's your wife or not common law wife, we're viewing all of that as equivalent tonight. Are you equal? And of course, if you are equal, you handle it in a certain way. If you're not equal, you handle it in a very different way. I think it's a question for brothers to consider. I'm interested in your thoughts, Richard.
Uh, to be politically correct, I think a lot of brothers would say that their relationship is egalitarian. That yeah, my wife, she has just as much say so as I do. Um, but I've worked with uh, men who take the biblical approach. Uh, I'm the head of the household. But then, by the time they're sitting in marriage counseling in front of me, the way that looks is it's my way or the highway. You know, um, I don't have a problem in our marriage. You have a problem in our marriage because you aren't giving me enough sex. You have the problem in our marriage because you are the problem in our marriage because you ain't cooking enough. The house is all messed up, right? Um, so, uh, especially, so I'm talking about men 70 plus, so that's some old school thinking. Uh,
Let's talk about young brothers. I mean, there's some young brothers on here tonight. I mean, they pledged. I pledged when I was 19, and I went to a new chapter initiation here, Omicron Lambda here, Omicron Psi Lambda here in La Place, Louisiana. I was shocked. I'm twice as old as half the brothers in the room, if you will, pushing 60. So the bottom line is, we got to make sure we're producing a message that I think is applicable to all groups. So let me push you a little bit and ask you, how does this resonate with young brothers, 20 and 22 and 25 years old?
so watch this. I'm looking at a question that I got from a brother out of Delta Epsilon Lambda down in East St. Louis. That he sent me this question directly. The question was, can you please ask, are modern women raised to be strong, independent women, or are they raised to be wise? Is it beyond them to be humble and submissive and still be strong? And he closed it out with, are independent black women destroying the black family?
I'll let you go first, but I got some opinions.
Oh. It's a lot of stuff being taught. And is my reality and how I came to my views any less valid than your reality and how you came to your views? Is there something wrong with a black woman being strong and independent? Uh, and then, where is the line where she's so strong and independent that either she doesn't need a man, or she wants to be dominant in the relationship, Or earlier, I talked about, a man trying to show that he ain't no punk. Well, conversely, there are women who feel like they have to show that they ain't no punk neither.
Right. Well, I'll jump in and
Come on, man.
I'll say three or four things. I think by definition, no, there's nothing wrong with it. It's remarkably beneficial for people to be strong. Strong emotionally, strong psychologically, strong financially and academically and educationally and culturally and in every other possible way. So clearly, Black women are in that category, and they certainly can be strong. And at times you have to be strong because life comes at you in spades, a lot of challenges. At times you got to be strong because for any number of reasons you're the only one there to fend for yourself for a lot of reasons, and then maybe part of the story. Many would argue, unfortunately, in the long history of our community, because there's been, I think, in part, there's just been so many challenges external against Black men that's made it hard to get education and have an income and have a job and that whole 9 yards. So, should you be strong? Absolutely. But I think the caveat, I love your term caveat. I like you, Dodge. You're on top of your game. I think the caveat is you got to give something up. Not just the Black woman, the Black man too, people who are not Black, if you will, because it's difficult for all parties to do all the exact same things. So it's at some point in time, both people got to sit down and have a conversation. Point you make a lot tonight. You got to have a conversation, and it's got to be a proactive, progressive, forward-thinking, open and honest, and earnest conversation about what somebody's going to give up. Now, both may not be able to work not only 40 but 50, 60 hours out of the house without something giving, or both may not be able to stay home and take care of an elderly relative if that's the issue. Both may not be able to be in charge of this issue or that issue, the finances or the food or the planning and arranging things and retirement. But balance comes in good communication, good conversation, and deciding well in advance what's going to matter. And that's, I think, what often I find in my practice when people are talking to me. And I think you have a bigger practice in this regard than mine, so we appreciate your comments tonight. That when that communication breaks down, or I think you said it very well earlier, if it never really started, if they didn't start off with that kind of conversation early, if it was just a fun-loving, free-spirited, open relationship, and they were just having sex and not really worrying about many of these things, well, in life things get more challenging. They get tougher and more diligent to address, and you've got to mature and you got to grow, and you got to do so, I think, in combination or in sync, I think, with your partner. That's often what I think I see when people don't do that, and they don't, as many would argue, grow together. Then problems develop, and then we're back saying, well, this is my job and my life, and I want to be strong, and you want to be strong, and both people fight to do the same things. Life requires some balance that oftentimes, I think, in Black relationships, we struggle if we don't talk well enough early on to decide who's going to be responsible for what, who's going to do what, and how can we do this together in a way that we actually can find some balance.
So let me show you how tricky this was when, I think about definitely my grandfather. Definitely my grandfather. All a good man, and I want to put that in parentheses. All a good man had to be was a good provider. If he brought his check home, he took care of the household, made sure the bills were able to be paid. He could have a woman on the side. He could drink 2, 3, 6 packs. On the weekend. He could be bald head, have a gut. All he had to do was be a good provider. And I think, unfortunately, there's still some brothers out there who feel like all I got to do is be a good provider. And she's, here's another part of the truth. That it's not easy. So as we talk about equality and egalitarian relationships where the man and the woman are equal, here is the bitter, ugly truth. In many households that I work with, I'm not saying all, in many households that I work with, the man is the primary breadwinner. So when in the world is the woman going to leave to live off of her 30,000 where he might be making 150,000 and think she's going to be okay? Right. So as you know, as I talk to my 20-year-old daughter, I say work hard in college so that you will have choices. The truth is that unfortunately, I work with a lot of women who, if their husband were to leave them, that they would live in poverty. I work with some older women who are primarily homemakers. Um, and so when you don't have your own financial well-being, uh, you're almost forced to tolerate all kinds of nonsense
Yeah.
and bull crap. So yeah, so one of the questions I thought about, earlier, if a man hits a woman, all she has to do is leave, right?
Yeah.
If she's making $0, has no support, nowhere to go, how does she leave?
Well, it's
Where,
impractical. You're
yeah,
right.
yeah, where's she going? Um, and so, like I said, this is a complex conversation.
To put it
Uh,
mildly. Yeah.
there are no easy answers, and oftentimes I say to my clients, if you ever go to see another psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, and they start off the conversation with, all you got to do is, I need you to grab your hat,
No,
get
it's
your coat.
complex. Well, I'm gonna say a few items, and then I'm gonna give you the last word, and we're gonna go to Surgeon General Jeff Sterling. A great conversation tonight. Really appreciate it. I just would kind of end with this contextual piece that for brothers of all shapes and sizes, my experience of the 30 years of being a psychiatrist, if you come to my office, close the door, expect confidentiality, and say something that that they don't hear everybody else, don't think everybody else will hear them say, is that brothers want a woman. They really do.
Right, right.
So I clearly think that there's some utility and value, whether it's in this conversation or in other ones, and older heads like the two people on the screen, both have been in this game 30 years each, finding a way to do as good a job as we can, giving some effective advice to young brothers to make this thing work. Because what you see on TV, there's some truth to it. Women are the ones very often that get on television and talk their story and can't find a man and X, Y, Z or whatever. But I think this idea that brothers don't want a woman and everybody's a player and cats just don't have it all together, I think it's just not necessarily accurate. I think a lot of guys are trying to get it together, definitely trying to get their finances together, definitely trying to maintain or obtain enough self-confidence in themselves that they can believe they can maintain a life with a woman and a job and paying your bills and all the challenges that come your way, especially with all the very often the racism and the discriminatory bias that disproportionately affects, I think, young black males. But I believe, and I want women to hear this particularly, that brothers want a woman, and we can find ways in our community to make these barriers go away or be minimized. We can help young people find a good relationship going forward. My final comments.
So, you make me think about the question, how do we as a community begin to truly celebrate the Black family? So you started off with the conversation, and we had the question about the strong, independent Black woman not need no man. Now watch this. Is there a place in our society where there's the strong, independent brother who don't need no woman? That, he has his big car, he has his big house, living in this nice community, and he can get any woman that he wants, you know, uh, sex as much as he wants, going to fine restaurants. Why in the world would he want to give that up to have a an anchor around his ankle uh, in this institution called marriage? So how do we begin to celebrate and say to the young man, hey, brother, you won't always be a young man. Hey, brother, your penis won't always be erect. Hey, brother, you might get sick. Brother, who's going to feed you? Who's going to wipe your backside? Who's going to clean your house? Who's going to give you a sponge bath?
I understand.
Right. And so, us older men have to sit some young brothers down and say, man,
keep it real, brother. Keep it real.
life is
Look,
coming,
we're
young
gonna.
man. Life is coming.
I can't thank you enough, brother. You have been, as always, on time, on target, and as you said in an email today, bring it with value. Very proud of you, brother Doss. We're
Thank
gonna
you.
kick this to our brother Surgeon General Jeff Sterling. Brother Sterling, you are up.
Right. He's on mute.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Brothers, I applaud your courage and I respect your intellect. This is an overtime session. We're not done yet to the audience, so stick around. I love the way that you gentlemen have framed the conversation, but the Surgeon General Initiative webinars are always meant to not just provoke thought and spark great conversations, but to empower the audience. I actually would like for you gentlemen to respond to me. Um, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn, but I do have a degree in psychology. I want to objectify this conversation a little bit based on some concerns from the National Institutes of Health. If we were to tell the audience that the basket of five or so most common causes of divorce are infidelity or extramarital affair, obviously, trouble with finances, a lack of communication, domestic violence, and substance abuse, and at the same time, we pointed out that the most common components of successful relationships were love, commitment, trust, time and attention, and good communication. If you were someone like me who focuses and specializes on health prevention and health promotion and beginning with the end in mind, what type of counseling do you do? What type of counseling would you do? How fruitful do you believe it is to actually share these facts with people on the front end as a means of navigating their relationship and promoting long-term success and stability?
I'll jump in first, and I'll be brief. I think that those are timely points, Jeff. I think the reality is I try to be an information-oriented psychiatrist. So when patients come to my office, I want to not only verbally give them the facts, but very often we give them handouts. I think people are more likely to respond to not only that which they hear, but what we call repetitive messaging. The issue regarding trust, I think, is key, and I think both of us spent a lot of time today kind of trying to talk about it. The reality is you have to trust that person to communicate with them, to share with them, I think, your innermost thoughts and your innermost secrets. I think Brother Richard Doss pointed that part out very, very clearly and carefully. I also think that issue of trust brings forth of an ability to be vulnerable and to allow that person and your significant other and your spouse to hear you when you're not at your best and when you are sharing that you have insecurity and you feel that there perhaps are going to be even more weaknesses and more failures and more impediments to success coming forward. I think that is the secret sauce. I think very often that may strengthen and bind a relationship, just like it happens very often if there's a death in a family, and it brings some people closer together in a more intimate and a more close emotional intimacy related relationship. Those are kind of my thoughts. I think it's also true to point out the good things, the love, the commitment, the trust are key. People have to know what the bad things are. Most folks come into my office, like with Brother Doss, tell me what's bad immediately. The infidelity or the no finances or we just don't, we don't have sex anymore, what have you. But I like to very often give them a chance to see the big picture, which may include some of the good things that they retain, and how can we get them to a point, help them grow to where they're doing better, understanding the relationship and growing together more progressively toward more better overall working relationship. Those are some of my thoughts.
And then, the thought that I have is that as opposed to divorce counseling or marital counseling, the thing that is probably needed even more so is something that we don't have and something that by and large we don't really do, and that's premarital counseling. So again, having the conversation before the wedding day. How about this? Let's have a conversation before the wedding is planned, because once you set the date for the wedding takes on a life of its own. Right. So
That's well
sometimes I,
said.
I ask the question, have the invitations gone out? Right. Um, so, I want to talk to you about the stuff that people don't talk about. And like you said, Dr. Sterling, whether it's the finances, communication, domestic violence, substance abuse, infidelity. Um, One of the things, so I'm a cognitive behaviorist. So it's two things that I'm looking at. I want to look at what are you thinking? What is it that you believe? And then ultimately, after you believe those things, what is it that you're doing that's not working? So a lot of times people come to therapy and they say, doc, uh, if you show us what we need to do, then we'll be better, and it'll be fixed, and we'll have a better marriage, and a better life. Now, here two things I want to say to you. It's not that people don't know what to do. It's not that people don't know what to do. So, and I have something for that. It's not that people don't know what to do. The question that I ask as a clinical psychologist is, if you know what to do, what's kept you from doing it? What's kept you from saying it? What's kept you from trying it? Right. And so this leads me to one of the biggest lies, as I relate to marriage counseling. One of the biggest lies ever told is that if I know better, I'll do better. That's the second biggest lie ever told. And I guess while I'm on, I might as well tell you the biggest lie ever told. And we talk about this in marriage counseling a lot. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words have never hurt me. So there is power in words. And, you can tear somebody down. Wounds heal. Physical wounds heal. But you can say some stuff to somebody that, they may never recover from. So
Excellent. Thank you for that. Once again, I'm going to stick to my guns here, and I actually will anecdotally point out that having a plan is a better way to get to a destination than being a butterfly fluttering around hoping to find something on which to pollinate. If you know where the most frequent negative and positive outcomes lie, and if you have effective communication with your loved one, and you choose to communicate and check in on progress toward your desired end result, that's a pretty good way to get to where it is you're going. I think that so much of this is assumption and taken for granted and not being purposeful in the way in which you move. And just marinate on that. To the audience, this conversation is not close to being over. This is the first of a party of three parts. We are a fraternity of Black men, and this conversation was a dynamic of professionals sharing best practices with you and obviously keeping it real. In the second part of this conversation, which will be announced a few weeks down the road, we will bring a few women therapists on to continue the conversation with brothers Doss and Deputy Surgeon General Bailey. And we will see what that dynamic looks like. We will truly do the Mars and Venus type interaction. And then we will have a part three, because as many of us have observed, relationships in the modern era have changed. So we are going to have a focus on the types of relationships that collegians may be experiencing, that young men and women may be experiencing. So the topic of love, relationships, and mental health. Again, we want to continue to focus on what promotes good mental health in these conversations. Will continue. In 2 weeks, we invite you to join us again. The topic in those 2 weeks, which is March 3rd, actually, it's Colorectal Awareness Month. So we'll go from the brain down to the other end of the body, and we'll talk about what else is colorectal health. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Sterling. I'm Surgeon General for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Thank you so much, brothers, Dr. Doss and brother Deputy Surgeon General Kennedy Bailey, for this very good conversation. And thanks to the audience for all the great comments and questions. You all have a good evening and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.